Welcome back to SecretSpool's Motivational Monday. I'm Rachel, and tonight's story explores something subtle yet deeply powerful: the quiet transformation that happens when you step away from constant distractions and allow yourself to actually hear your own thoughts. It's not a dramatic story, but it reveals how profoundly life can shift when you make one simple choice to pause the noise. Let's begin. I didn't realize how often I picked up my phone until it suddenly wasn't there to entertain me. The first morning without it felt strangely hollow, like someone had dimmed the lights on the world. There was no doom scroll waiting to swallow the first 10 minutes of my day, no half-asleep decision to lose myself in other people's lives. Just me, my coffee, and the sound of my own breathing, a combination I hadn't experienced in far too long. It felt like waking up in a home that was suddenly too quiet. That silence felt oddly uncomfortable, almost like sitting across from someone you haven't seen in years and not knowing what to say. I realized I had trained myself to rely on constant stimulation, constant input, constant noise to fill even the smallest spaces in my day. Without it, I had no choice but to acknowledge how uneasy I felt being alone with my own thoughts. It wasn't the quiet that bothered me. It was what the quiet revealed. By day 2, habit took over. I kept reaching for my phone like a reflex, the same way someone might check their pocket for keys or adjust glasses they aren't wearing. My hand drifted toward the table over and over again, searching for something that wasn't there. Even when I picked the phone up, unlocked it, and stared at its nearly empty home screen, I realized I wasn't looking for information. I was looking for distraction, for a quick and empty spark of stimulation that had become my default escape. It was humbling to see how automatic it had become. Not a choice, not a need, not even genuine interest, just a loop. A well-practiced, well-rehearsed, deeply unexamined pattern I had been repeating for years. And without the usual noise I poured into my mornings, the void felt enormous. For the first time in a long time, I could clearly feel the difference between entertainment and dependency. By day 3, the restlessness really set in. My mind kept nudging me with that familiar whisper, "Just check for a second." But check what? I wasn't waiting for news. I wasn't expecting a message. Nothing urgent was hiding behind the screen. What I was avoiding, though, was stillness. Silence. I had become so used to never being alone with my thoughts that even a few quiet minutes felt challenging. Yet, in that discomfort, there was the faint outline of something important, a chance to reconnect with parts of myself I had been tuning out. Then day 4 arrived, and something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, more like a gentle exhale my mind had been holding for years. My focus began returning in ways I didn't expect. I sat down to read and actually stayed with the words. I finished entire articles instead of grazing through headlines. Even conversations felt clearer, as if I had been listening through a fog this entire time without knowing it. The world around me didn't change. My ability to actually take it in did. It felt like rediscovering a part of myself I didn't know I had misplaced. Without constant digital noise, my mind settled into a calmer rhythm. I wasn't chasing stimulation anymore. I was absorbing the moment. And in that slower pace, I remembered what it felt like to live without rushing through everything. Stillness wasn't a void. It was a kind of nourishment I hadn't allowed myself in years. By day 5, the silence no longer felt threatening. It felt peaceful. The world didn't demand anything from me in those quiet pockets. I wasn't scrambling to fill the space or scrambling to avoid it. I simply let the moment exist. In that soft stillness, I learned something surprising. Silence doesn't expose your weaknesses. it reveals your strength. Instead of running from my thoughts, I began meeting them with curiosity, even compassion. In those quiet moments, I started asking myself questions I had neglected. What do I actually want to do right now? What matters to me? Where is my attention going, and is that where I want it to be? The answers weren't profound, but they were honest. Without the pressure of constant input, I could hear myself clearly again. And in that clarity, small desires resurfaced. The wish to slow down, to revisit hobbies, to give myself permission to rest without guilt. On day 6, something unexpected sparked. Inspiration. Not the overwhelming kind that sweeps you into a whirlwind, but the gentle kind that nudges you towards small, meaningful actions. I cleaned a corner of my living space I'd been avoiding. I journaled my thoughts without rushing. I reached out to someone I'd lost touch with. For the first time in a long while, my creativity felt like it belonged to me again, not something buried under constant distraction. What surprised me most was how natural it felt to slow down. I stopped treating every quiet moment like something to avoid. I let myself breathe and exist without needing to escape. And in that stillness, I found emotional clarity I didn't know I was missing. Feelings I had muted with scrolling finally had room to surface. Instead of pushing them away, I learned from them. Patterns became clearer. What stressed me, what inspired me, and the emotions I'd sidestepped for too long. By day 7, I realized I was happier. Not overwhelmingly, not dramatically, just quietly and steadily happier. Like taking off shoes that never quite fit and feeling your feet relax into the ground. I wasn't checking out of my life anymore. I was checking in. And that small shift created a ripple that touched everything: my mood, my energy, my focus, my interactions. Presence became my anchor instead of something I occasionally stumbled into. Eventually, yes, I went back online. I didn't abandon my phone or delete everything. I just returned with awareness. I opened apps because I chose to, not because I felt compelled. I scrolled with intention, not out of habit. And for the first time in years, my device felt like a tool instead of a tether. It didn't own my attention. I did. And here's the truth I learned. The phone wasn't the problem. The habit was. The autopilot was. The unconscious repetition that convinces you distraction is rest, when in reality, distraction often keeps you too tired to rest at all. Breaking the cycle wasn't about rejecting technology. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself I had slowly handed over to it without noticing. With awareness, everything felt different. The world looked clearer, as if it had been waiting for me to look up. Even the smallest moments became opportunities to be present rather than escape. I realized presence isn't a luxury, it's a choice, one that strengthens with practice. And the more I practiced, the more awake I felt in my own life. Thank you for listening to this Motivational Monday story. I'm Rachel, and I hope this encourages you to pause today, even for a moment, and consider where your attention goes when you aren't intentionally guiding it. The smallest shift in awareness can change the entire shape of your day and sometimes your life. If this resonated with you, stay tuned for more stories here on SecretSpool.